Spectrovision Radio.
Do not let this be the story of evil triumphing over good. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? You want to get caught? Is that it? That's what I thought when I first saw those words sloppily drawn in blood on the parquet floor. Svensson, my partner, agreed. Either that or he's fucking with us, she said, exhaling cigarette smoke which mingled with our visible breath as we stood out in the cold on the porch of the latest victim's house. I looked out at the street, at the row homes opposite. On the surface, they were identical to the one we were standing outside. The only difference was the atrocity number 39 had bore witness to, the brutality that had transpired within its walls. But I knew better than to think it wouldn't bleed out into the whole neighborhood. A monstrosity like this has a toxic radius, and it touches everyone, even if they don't realize it. The crime scene guys are finishing up, I said, turning my gaze to Svensson once more. But unless he's suddenly gotten sloppy, I'm guessing we're going home empty-handed again. Svensson sighed and put her cigarette out in a polystyrene coffee cup she'd left on the porch for that very reason. Yeah, she muttered. I ain't holding my breath. I understood the despondency. I was feeling it too. We were working a case as batshit crazy as it had been drawn out. 3 dead bodies, linked together by the strange messages we found written in the victim's blood at each scene. Message 1. Be ready to see the warning signs of how corruptible you truly are. Message 2. Do not try to take fate into your own hands. Message 3 was the one we just found. The one that warned against letting this be the story of evil triumphing over good. What they meant, I didn't know. I wasn't much one for riddles or puzzles, never had been. Svensson said that was to my detriment on a case like this, but I told her that what got people caught was good old-fashioned detective work, not agreeing to play the sick games of a demented killer. And sick really was the word. I hesitate to call any kind of violence normal, but what had been perpetrated against these victims wasn't the kind of thing you see every day. The first victim was missing their eyes, the second, their tongue, and the third, the one whose home we were standing outside, was missing their heart. Those pieces of the victims had not been recovered. The MO, the messages, if the perp had some grand design, if it was meant to mean something, it was lost on me. If he wants us to stop him, and we haven't yet, that means we're doing something wrong. Svensson's comment snapped me back into focus. We're not the ones mutilating people, I said. In this equation, we're doing the opposite of wrong. Svensson shrugged. I don't know, she muttered. This little to go on, 3 victims deep. Do you feel you're doing something right? I chewed on a response, but it didn't taste right, so I just swallowed my pride as Svensson headed back inside to ask if the crime scene investigators had turned up anything. But we both knew what the answer would be. Truth is, I needed to solve the case. My name, my reputation, was already taking a beating by the time what the media referred to as the message murders started. I got word from friends in high places that someone with an axe to grind had me in their crosshairs and was compiling a dossier, trying to launch an official investigation into my actions. Supposedly, someone had an arsenal of dirt on me, dirt spanning most of my career, and it was only a matter of time before they used it, hung me out to dry. I had a few hunches of who it might be, a short list of people I'd pissed off along the way. But whoever it was, one thing was for sure. They had no idea what it actually takes to do the job. No idea how to separate theory from practice. Because theory will get you your ass handed to you, if you don't get with the practice. And fast. Had I done things you're not meant to do? Of course I fucking had. But I'd be damned if I'd let anyone tell me I'd been wrong to do them. So, even though there might have been a noose around my neck, one that could pull tight at any moment, I ignored it, continued forward the only way I knew how, accepting the logic that old dogs can't learn new tricks. But if I could solve the message murders, then turn in my badge and take early retirement, maybe I could skate free. Maybe I could offer one final compensatory high that would encourage the powers that be to turn a blind eye to the many lows. I dragged myself to my desk the morning after the third body was found, and nodded to Svensson, who predictably was there already. "You look like shit," she said. I shrugged it off. But, despite my many years dealing with the worst humanity has to offer, the message murders were getting to me. You might think I lost sleep over it, but it was the opposite. Sleep became a prison from which I couldn't escape horrific nightmares. I'd always tried to think like the people I was hunting, a way to anticipate their next move, but I'd never had it carry over into my sleep before. Sleep became a lab, where my mind experimented with visions of what the killer might be doing with the body parts they'd taken from the victims. I saw them being liquefied, one by one, then poured into a vat, brimming with a strange green substance, which glowed brighter as each blended body part was added to it. I knew something was lurking deep within that neon green substance. Someone, maybe. I could see that whatever it was trying to swim up through it, to break the surface. But it couldn't quite make it, falling back down into the depths each time. In my dreams, I knew that thing simply wasn't strong enough yet, but that it was getting there. Anyway, that's why I looked like shit. We lulled on for a few hours, analyzing the messages, before I got tired of waiting. While Svensson lost herself in the riddles, I got out there, pounded the sidewalks, knocked on doors, chased down informants. You don't sit around expecting to catch a break. You engineer one. And that's exactly what I was trying to do. None of it amounted to anything, but it was only by doing so that I realized I was being followed. A faded red station wagon was prowling around. I saw it multiple times, doing a good job of keeping a low profile as it tailed me, something the driver might have gotten away with if it weren't for my trained eye. When it got a little too close, I wrote down the plate number. The car was registered to a James Laneck, 38 years old. Since he seemed to have taken a keen interest in my movements, I decided it was worth paying him a visit. I made my way up the stairs of the shithole apartment building, found the door marked 18 in faded bronze lettering, and knocked. A few seconds later, he opened the door. The moment we locked eyes, I saw it in his face. The kind of look you only get when you know you're caught. A look of absolute, abject fear. But he blindsided me, knocked me with his shoulder and sent me tumbling backwards as he sprinted past, tearing down the corridor. I was scrambling to my feet when I heard him bolt out through the main door to the building and out onto the street. I contemplated going after him, but the son of a bitch had winded me, and left the door to his apartment wide open. I decided I was better off taking a look. I stood no real chance of catching up to him anyway. The apartment was simple to the point of being unnerving, populated only by the absolute bare essentials needed to keep someone alive. I was immediately drawn to the small desk he'd pushed up against the blacked-out window. There was a single journal-type notebook on it, along with a pen. I picked up the journal and opened it, but I struggled to read the handwriting. I did manage to decipher the title of one of the passages, though. Transcript 14. If these were transcripts, it meant there was audio. I scrambled around the apartment before I found a digital dictaphone back at the desk where I'd started, in the built-in drawer. After a few seconds trying to figure it out, I got it to work.
Evil can only enter the world through evil. Therefore, paradoxically, The gateway for evil to enter the world is the evil that's already here. That hallowed truth is the principle behind the ritual. Only when enough damage is done, when enough blood is shed, will it choose its vehicle, its emissary, anointed as such to engineer the conditions for its induction into the physical realm. The Antichrist can only approach when the table is set, and quite a feast is being prepared.
The word scared me, not because I believed any of it, whatever the fuck it was trying to say, but because James Laennec clearly did. But what I found next frightened me in a much more profound way than the ramblings of any madman ever could. Making a sweep of the apartment, I opened the closet in the bedroom. There were no clothes inside. Instead, it had been given another purpose. It was entirely occupied by a corkboard, much like the ones we as detectives create when we're working a case. A visual map of what we know, what we don't, a tool to help us see connections, visualize mistruths. And on it, alongside information about the victims, were 3 photographs of me. To my luck, James Laennec hadn't gotten very far. The APB on him had only been out a couple of hours when a tip came in from a routine informant who'd just checked James Laennec into a crummy hotel that was often a go-to for those with very little cash and those trying to flee something. I threw everything I had at him in the interrogation room, but the son of a bitch wouldn't budge. He gave me exactly nothing, yet I refused to be beaten. "Let me take another run at him," I demanded. Lieutenant Mueller stared back at me. "There's nothing for you to try in there that you haven't already," he said, patience clearly wearing thin. He looked away and sighed. "We're cutting him loose," he added. I was so dumbfounded it took me a moment before I could speak. "That man in there believes he's the devil's servant. Truly believes it," I said, unable to conceal my exasperation. "That kind of crazy faith, God knows what he'll do next." Mueller took that as a cue to tell me what I already knew, but didn't want to believe. "We've got nothing," he said. "Laennec's obsessed with the case. A little nutty, sure, but he's not the one we're hunting." Mueller stood up and put both palms down on his desk, leaning forward a little to bridge the gap between us. "We don't have a single thing to link him to any of the crimes," he said. I went to protest, but Mueller got there first. "I'm telling you to leave it alone," he said, his tone leaving no room for bullshit. I stormed out of his office. I think he called after me, but I was too far gone. I couldn't really hear much of anything. I did try to obey his orders, tried to leave it alone, but the words of the third message kept coming back to me. "Do not let this be the story of evil triumphing over good." So I decided that if no one else was going to help me, then it was my sole duty to put a stop to it at any cost. It had taken me longer than I'd hoped to get what I needed, but I knew I couldn't half-ass it. One false move and the narrative would crumble, along with my credibility. Whatever anyone tells you, trials are really about who can tell the best story, and I needed to make sure that no one could poke holes in mine. I watched James Laennec, studied his routine. When I had it down, when I knew I had time to do what I needed to do, I broke into his apartment. I covered up that I'd been there, but left behind what I needed to leave. It's not framing someone if you know they're guilty. Sometimes Lady Justice needs a helping hand, especially as she doesn't like to get her hands dirty. That's what I told myself that night when I planted those things in Laennec's apartment. But I decided that was the truth long before. With the deed done, I got home, parked, and made my way inside. I knew it was the kind of night where I needed to let off some steam, so I poured myself a drink and went out onto the back porch. It was cold, but the booze and the adrenaline meant I didn't really feel it. I slowly sensed myself coming down. This was it, my ticket out. James Laennec was going down for the message murders. In the morning, I'd organize for an anonymous tip to come in. Then I'd be the one to lead the charge, make the arrest. I'd be vindicated. Apologize too, even. It'd create enough pressure for the agenda against me to go away, and I'd ride that train all the way to my early retirement. Yeah, that felt good. And with each refill from the bottle, it felt even better. But I was set on edge again when I heard rustling. I stared out over the backyard. The light from the porch didn't offer much in terms of visibility, beyond a few feet, but I couldn't see any movement out there. I shrugged it off, took another sip of my drink. But there it was again, movement. I made my way down off the porch and inched forward into the dark. And when I did, someone lunged out of the black. By the time I saw it was James Laennec, I was on my back. He was doing his best to pin me down with one arm, the other holding a hatchet. He swung it, and I moved just enough for it to barely miss and make a horrible, dull thud as it hit the dirt. He lifted it again, and again crashed it down, again just barely missing my head. But this time, he'd driven it into the ground with such force that he was having a hard time wrenching it back out. I took my chance. I bit down on his ear as hard as I could while thrusting my knee into his groin. It was enough, and I managed to flip him onto his back so the roles were reversed. Now looming over him, I was able to reach my gun. I snatched it out of its holster and pointed it at him. Time seemed to slow. It was like my brain was able to make complex calculations in the blink of an eye. "This is even better than what you had planned," it said. "He attacked you on your own property. You kill him in self-defense. Then they find what you left in his apartment. You win." And that's exactly what I did. I pulled the trigger. The deed was done, but I knew there was no time to rest. There'd been an unexpected twist in my story, and I needed to incorporate it into my narrative, set it all out in my head so I could tell it just right. I looked down at James Laennec as he lay there dead in my backyard. And what I did then, I can only describe it as being on autopilot, like I had no say in the matter. Because the things I did to him, my God, the things I realized in that moment that I'd done to the other victims too. It was like the memories of the atrocities I'd perpetrated suddenly stepped out from the shadows in the back of my mind. I tried to fight it, tried to stop myself from doing what I felt I had no control over. And as I tried to fight that unwinnable battle, the memories of the other times I tried to fight it catapulted themselves back into my consciousness. I remembered feeling some force of greater good trying to fight it through me, forcing my finger to scrawl those warnings in blood after I'd killed each victim. Those messages were the tiny part of me that had some grasp of what I was doing, trying to fight it. Be ready to see the warning signs of how corruptible you truly are. Do not try to take fate into your own hands. Do not let this be the story of evil triumphing over good. I'd been trying to warn myself because I'd been corrupt. I'd taken things into my own hands that weren't mine to take. I'd let my entire life be the story of evil triumphing over good. And something had taken notice. Something that had won out over the forces trying to stop it. The realization activated something in me. I got in my car, taking a piece of James Laennec with me, and drove. I hurtled through the night by instinct, using some kind of terrifying knowledge awakening within me. It led me to an industrial estate, to a storage unit that I had the key to. I opened it up, already knowing what would be inside. It was the location of the vat, the one I'd seen in my nightmares. That glowing green liquid concealing something within its depths. And I had something it wanted, something it needed. I added what I'd taken from James Laennec, the fourth and final piece. and I now knew what that vat was. It was a portal through which that something that desperately wanted to get into our world would enter. And I knew what it wanted to bring with it. The dark. Forever. Because I am its pitiful emissary, feverishly laying the table for the bloody feast that will soon be served up. I can't escape. None of us can. We can only bear witness to it and be consumed by its bloody, unending chaos.